In the Chinese Cultural Revolution, chaos, control, and rebirth. Welcome to today's episode. We're exploring one of the most turbulent and transformative periods in modern Chinese history, the Cultural Revolution. Launched in 1966 by Chairman Mao Zedong, the Cultural Revolution was a radical political movement aimed at reinforcing communist ideology by purging so-called capitalist and traditional elements from Chinese society. But it quickly descended into chaos. Millions of students became Red Guards, roaming the streets to challenge authority, attack teachers, destroy historical relics, and enforce Mao's vision. Intellectuals were humiliated, families torn apart, schools and universities shut down. Entire generations were thrust into confusion, fear, and violence. But what were Mao's true motives behind the Cultural Revolution? How did he mobilize an entire nation into ideological warfare? And what was the cost, politically, socially, and culturally, for China? Today, we'll unpack the rise of Mao's campaign, the role of the Red Guards, and the deep scars and complex legacies the Cultural Revolution left behind. 1. Mao's motives, power and purity. To fully grasp the Cultural Revolution, we need to look at Mao Zedong, not just as the founding father of the People's Republic of China, but as a leader fighting to regain control over his party and his country. By the early 1960s, Mao's power had noticeably waned. The Great Leap Forward, his ambitious economic and social campaign, had ended in disaster, triggering a massive famine that caused the deaths of tens of millions. This failure severely damaged Mao's standing within the Communist Party. In the wake of this catastrophe, other party leaders like Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping began advocating for more pragmatic, moderate policies inspired by Soviet-style reforms. They sought to stabilize China's economy and rebuild the nation. But Mao saw these efforts as revisionism, a betrayal of the true revolutionary path. More than just ideology, he feared losing relevance. His personal authority was slipping, and the revolutionary fervor he had once commanded was fading. The Cultural Revolution was Mao's bold and ruthless response. It was designed to reignite the class struggle, setting the masses against the entrenched elite within the party and society, purge political rivals, especially prominent figures like Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping, who threatened his control, and most importantly, forge a new generation of loyal revolutionaries, dedicated not only to communism but personally devoted to Mao himself. Mao's strategy centered on mobilizing China's youth, idealistic, energetic, and eager for change. He called on them to become the vanguard of this revolution within the revolution. This unleashed a wave of social upheaval that would reshape Chinese society in profound and often devastating ways. 2. The Red Guards. Revolution unleashed in 1966, Mao issued a powerful call to China's youth to bombard the headquarters. With his endorsement, radical groups of students quickly organized themselves into what became known as the Red Guards, self-proclaimed defenders of Maoist ideology. The Red Guards unleashed a campaign against what they called the Four Olds: old customs, old culture, old habits, and old ideas. These targets became symbols of the past that needed to be eradicated to make way for the new socialist future Mao envisioned. Schools and universities were shut down. Teachers, intellectuals, and government officials faced public humiliation, brutal beatings, and even death during violent struggle sessions. Temples, priceless artworks, ancient books, and historical relics were destroyed in waves of cultural vandalism. But the Red Guards were far from a unified force. Instead, they fractured into competing factions that often clashed violently with one another. What started as a movement to purify society and enforce revolutionary ideals quickly spiraled into anarchy. The chaos was so severe that entire factories stopped operating, transportation systems broke down, and daily life in many cities ground to a halt. Violence and disorder spread widely, threatening to destabilize the country. Even Mao realized the situation was spinning out of control. By the late 1960s, he was forced to call in the military to restore order. Yet, despite these efforts, the social, cultural, and political damage had already become immense and long-lasting. 3. Impact on society. a nation turned upside down. The social cost of the Cultural Revolution was staggering. Millions were persecuted: teachers, scientists, artists, party officials, and everyday citizens were imprisoned, tortured, or sent to labor camps. Education collapsed, universities closed, and a generation of young people lost years of learning. Many were sent to the countryside during the Down to the Countryside movement, forced to work alongside peasants to be re-educated. Families were broken apart, as children denounced parents, friends betrayed one another, and trust in society evaporated. The economy slowed, and governance all but disappeared in some regions. Fear dominated daily life, as political loyalty became more important than competence or compassion. Culturally, China lost priceless historical artifacts, ancient traditions, and the wisdom of its intellectuals. Confucianism, Buddhism, and other aspects of Chinese heritage were attacked as feudal remnants. Yet despite the chaos, some Chinese remember the era with mixed emotions, seeing it as a time of idealism and rebellion, when young people believed they were shaping history. For many others, it was a period of profound trauma, loss, and disillusionment. The economy slowed, and governance all but disappeared in some regions. Fear dominated daily life, as political loyalty became more important than competence or compassion. Culturally, China lost priceless historical artifacts, ancient traditions, and the wisdom of its intellectuals. Confucianism, Buddhism, and other aspects of Chinese heritage were attacked as feudal remnants. Yet despite the chaos, some Chinese remember the era with mixed emotions, seeing it as a time of idealism and rebellion, when young people believed they were shaping history. For many others, it was a period of profound trauma, loss, and disillusionment. 4. The end and aftermath. Rebirth from ruin. The Cultural Revolution officially ended in 1976, with Mao's death. But by then, the damage was done. A power struggle followed, and the Gang of Four, Mao's closest radical allies, were arrested. In the years that followed, China's new leaders, including Deng Xiaoping, moved to reverse the policies of the Cultural Revolution. Deng introduced economic reforms, opened China to the global market, and restored educational institutions. Though the government never fully denounced Mao, official statements acknowledged the Cultural Revolution as a serious error caused largely by his unchecked authority. However, a full reckoning with the Cultural Revolution has never happened in China. Public discussion remains limited. The stories of victims are rarely told in official narratives. For many, the period remains a wound never fully healed, one remembered quietly, through personal memory more than public discourse. Yet its legacy continues to shape China. The fear of social chaos influences government policies to this day.